On. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, we think that in our world today, where the norm is getting into a relationship, having a family, etc., that poses a lot of complexity and pressure amidst a diversity of complicated realities. Things being very expensive, being very difficult to even find a partner, and to a large extent, this has complicated the lives of majority of people insofar as it has also liberated and made things nice. We recognize that being in a relationship and having a family is cool, but it's not an overriding value or metric for success and happiness on an individual and collective level due to diverse economic, political, and social realities. And we think that this particularly looks like, but is not limited to, society largely kind of dictating what happiness and fulfillment really look like. You grow up, you go to school, you hope that you find a partner who's great and compatible, you get married, you have kids, whether by your own or you adopt, you die, you expect that legacy to come for your children, rinse and repeat. Those are certain expectations. Here are a few features of our world which we think are very relevant to the debate. Number one, given that this is a prefers motion, it's a comparative of worlds. We recognize that in this new hypothetical world I'm going to characterize, they don't have a point of comparison, so they won't really be able to feel bad and say, in the world where we're debating in, they don't have that. But we recognize since we're debating in this world where the norm is the opposite, we're going to use certain features there to be able to give a proper comparative. Number two, what do we mean by single? Intuitively, we think being single is not being in a romantic particular relationship, no marriage and family. We recognize that on our side, you can still have colleagues and friends, but we're willing to take the high burden if push comes to shove to say that society will be largely individualistic as opposed to the world we have now, which is largely more collective. We also recognize that Maslow's hierarchy and things are still going to exist. We can still have sex, for instance, and other pleasures, absent necessarily being in a particular committed relationship with particular individuals. That is to say that we think in the world we have right now, it will be the norm to be single, but if you choose to still be in a relationship, like date someone exclusively, get married, have children, that can still happen, but that's going to be an outlier rather than the rule. And the intuition pump here is simple. If there's anything that's really difficult, it reinforces those particular choices. That is to say, we think that it will further bolster the choices of people who, despite it not being a norm, choose to have a family, choose to get married. Why is that the case? Simply because in our society right now, if there's anything really hard and difficult, it makes those particular things even more meaningful. Whether that be climbing Mount Everest, starting a particular business, being a lawyer or doctor, being a debate champion, we think a lot of those things are not necessarily the norm, but we think it reinforces those capacities when you're able to do it. The next feature of our model are particular trade-offs we're really, really willing to make, and we think that on our world, we're gonna have less kids, smaller population, leading to like a better quality of life for those people who are single and those minorities who choose to be able to have a family. And second, we think society in general will be a bit more individualistic. What do we stand for coming from opening government? A couple of pushes. Number one, we think that as an individual and as a collective, you're going to be better off in terms of your own fulfillment if you're single, absent the complexity of having to deal with many realities of other people. And number two, you might be asking, like, why does that become the metric? And simply, we defend being able to be the best version of yourself, not for anybody, but simply because of yourself. And thirdly, I'm going to prove that society and preferring a world is going to be just better off on our side versus the shit show we have right now. But before that, CO, go ahead.
Yeah, while you tell us about those norms and comparing and the pressure, please note that probably a successful single person is presented to public as well as a role model in your society, because it's always created by the media, TV shows, books, everything. There's always going to be a role model you compare yourself to, and you're never going to be as perfect as a person presented as such a role model.
Yeah, but having that pressure of someone being better than you is something to aspire for. And even if you might not be able to like get to that level, at least you're still going to be a better version of yourself. So I understand where you're coming from. People might still feel a degree of disappointment. That's not the burden we're going to take. If you want to take that, go ahead. What we're simply saying is that life will be marginally better when you have less complexity to deal with. Why is that the case? My first layer of analysis is talking about the variables in terms of decision making. When you are an individual making individual decisions for yourself, it's simply Maslow's hierarchy for you, and any economic resources, fame, etc., are solely for your own particular legacy. Let's suck the oxygen out of opposition's intuition pumps of, oh, Joseph, my family motivates me, I'm doing this for myself. On your side, you're just fucking selfish. We think that on our society right now, a lot of pressures and problems are really rooted on finding a certain sense of validation hinged on things outside your level of control. Being able to find a partner who loves you, a partner who stays with you throughout time, being able to find kids who actually give a shit about you. And a lot of those things, yes, can be meaningful, but introduce such a complexity to be able to live life. And we think that even if their side calls us selfish and stuff, we think that we actually push the human capacity farther to be able to dictate happiness for your own standard, absent any other form of comparison. The second is that, in terms of the comparative with opposition, we think that sure, you might be motivated by other things, but in terms of just being able to accumulate those things for your own experiences, it bolsters the capacity of those experiences as opposed to having to do it in terms of other people. So what we tell you coming from opening government very clearly is in terms of having the proximate locus of control, which is yourself, and secondly, not having any form of validation that you might need from other people. And with that, we're quite very proud and happy to open this for the best possible debate.